Do you think there's anything missing from the fifth edition feats system, specific feats or prerequisites or anything related to feats at all?
Honestly, there are too many feats. I'm all about the prerequisites. I think it makes it flavorful and unique, and I don't like the homogenization that's happening right now with all of the playable races and things. So I like trying to keep it as unique as possible. I would really like there to be feats that are tied to classes, like fighter specific feats or rogue specific feats, and you have to have a minimum number of levels in rogue in order to get access to this feat, just to give you more power up, more flavorful, interesting things to really reward players for choosing specific kinds of characters.
I kind of agree with you with there's too many feats. Like it feels like they split up a bunch of feats to just have a higher number. So a lot of them are poorly optimized. Like I'd like to see a lot more, or like especially for me, the melee fighters and the grappling rules. Like it feels like they split one great feat for grapplers into three different ones. I would also like to see upgraded feats, right? Where you get one thing and then you can boost it up a little bit later. So, it requires you can get this one to level 4. I'd like Dragonlance did it, right? Where you can get one starting out and then you have to wait until level 4 to get the next one.
They did that a lot in 3.5 too, right? Where you had to have power attack in order to get cleave and shit like that.
I think the amount of feats that we have right now is just a telltale sign that we're ready to move on from the edition. We have to keep adding things to make the existing players, to keep it interesting for them, and we're at the point now worry about it so much. It's probably time to move to a new edition. So it's not that I have anything against feats specifically. I think it's just at this point in the evolution of 5th edition, they're becoming too many.
Frankly, the biggest misstep with feats is the fact that they made it an optional rule because they didn't think anybody would want them. And now here we are drowning in them.
Yeah, fair point.
I wonder if a lot of people complained about feats from 3.5 and they're just like, okay,
I think
fine,
that
we won't do it.
They did a bunch of polls during Unearthed Arcana about do you take ability score improvements or feats, and a lot of people said both. Every time that we hit a place we get both the ability score improvement and the feat, and so Wizards went, oh god, they're popular, and just flailed.
Welcome to the It's a Mimic podcast, where you never know what you're gonna get.
Welcome to another It's a Mimic episode where we continue our conversation on player options in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm Kyle, and with me today are Adam and Terry, and this episode is called Feats Part 5, Running Over the Feats of Races.
In this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, this panel of Dungeon Masters will be looking at all the feats that require you to have a specific race in order to select them.
As D&D moves out of 5th edition, Wizards of the Coast is shifting from focusing on racial benefits to focusing on things that you get from backgrounds. We've seen feats get tied to backgrounds already in the Strixhaven and Dragonlance books. Today, we're talking all about the racial feats, but it doesn't seem like too far of a stretch to give these out to players, even if they don't meet the racial requirements. Some of them are just really generic. So I want to ask, if you were to allow players to take these feats without meeting the requirements, would you make them justify it somehow with their backstory? Let's roll initiative for this.
13.
3.
8. Terry.
Yes, I would make them justify it somehow. Their backstory. I think it only makes sense. We have to justify it somehow. So if we're removing the racial justification, which is a phrase that seems wrong in itself, if we're removing the racial justification, then we need to do something. Background is the part that seems to make the most sense there.
One of the things that I have done, I make them justify it for every feat. One of the things that I've done all of the time, okay, not all the time, I should be better about it. But when I know that we're going to hit one of these feat milestones, I tell them 2 sessions in advance, hey, we are going to be leveling soon. Think about whether or not you want to take a feat and start acting like you would. Like you want to take the chef feat, start offering to cook, during the long rest overnight, right? If you want to take the sentinel feat, plant your feet in combat and stand there and fight, or grapple more often so you don't let people get away, or whatever it is, right? Just so that people start to think about what this looks like from a narrative standpoint, and then the mechanics back that up in a session or two. It's not always perfect. It doesn't always work. And I don't always remind people, But if it works out, it feels really, really good.
Yeah, I would have to agree. If you're gonna take a feat, I would like you to explain it because I always thought about it, that saying it takes 10,000 hours to master something, and that's what I consider feats, right? So what were you doing practicing? What led you to, your discovery of this new skill kind of thing?
Look, if it takes 10,000 hours to get good at something, our listeners must be pretty much masters at listening to It's a Mimic, because fuck, we put out a lot of content.
Because we're not masters at running this thing, so hopefully somebody is.
Okay, before we get any deeper into this, we're just going to cut to a quick ad break.
We've previously covered quite a bit in our discussion on player options in 5th edition. For all those episodes and more, you can follow or subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and dozens of other podcast apps. And if you'd like to support us, you can donate through the website, check our store, or join our Patreon and get access to other episodes and series. If you'd like to pay for some ad space on It's a Mimic, or just shout out to a friend, please reach out to us through our email and website that are listed in the show notes below.
This week on the It's a Mimic podcast, we will be running as quickly as we can to catch up on Undead episodes, Pantheon episodes for the Patreon, Legend Lore episodes, Mailbag episodes, and more. Check frequently, because every day there will be another episode dropped, sometimes two. But for now, let's get back to the episode.
So what is a feat? Rules as written. Well, feats are a special skill that a character has mastered outside of their normal level progression. Although I don't think that really fits with today's episode, where we are specifically talking about racial-based ones. These are more akin to a special genetic trait that has been passed down or inherited from your family line. In terms of where you get them, they are a variant rule, so there's a couple options for this. Normally, when a character would get an ASI bump, they can instead choose to replace it with a feat, although Adam, you mentioned earlier that a lot of people just do ASIs and feats as well. And I know a number of tables as well opt to allow players to take a feat at level 1 as well. How do prerequisites work? Well, sometimes a feat will come with a certain prerequisite that you need to be able to take that feat, such as a certain minimum ability score, racial, or a spellcasting ability. That also means that there are certain scenarios where a character might lose access to a given feat, whether that be because of their ability score has dropped below the threshold, or maybe their racial lineage has changed from the reincarnate spell. At which point it is up to the DM to decide how they want to deal with that. I personally hate just taking away a feat altogether, because it just feels, I don't know, like you're already screwing them over somewhere. It feels mean to screw them again. So I would either, if they're going to lose it permanently, I would allow them to choose another feat, or, same thing if their lineage changed. I would allow them to just pick something else. How do you guys deal with it when?
I have no problem letting them just fucking keep it, because if you polymorph and you get to keep all of your stuff, you get to keep your feats, right? So if you wild shape into a bear because you're a druid, that is a bear with the feats. So that's fine. Keep your stuff. It also makes you unique. If you get polymorphed into a dwarf and you used to be a Goliath, you are a dwarf now that can do Goliath shit. That makes you more unique than ever and more likely to be on like a hero's path. Yeah, let them keep it.
Yeah, I also don't mind letting the players keep their feats, but not because I'm concerned about screwing them over or anything. We need to challenge these players as DMs. That's the main reason that we're there. And so something may happen that removes a prerequisite for a feat, which means they can't use it anymore. That's part of the challenge. I have no problem with that. The reason that I wouldn't take it away from them is it's more for me to manage, and it will probably slow down the pace of the game in trying to police this properly. Whereas we're probably going to have more enjoyment with the game if we just continue letting the players use their abilities, and then I factor that in to how I shape the challenges ahead.
All right, well, let's head into some feats then. Why don't we roll to see who's going first?
10.
Natural one.
Oh, 5. Terry, you're up first again.
Sure. Alrighty. Okay, so I'll kick us off with Elven Accuracy. You can find this on Xanathar's Guide to Everything, or in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. There is a prerequisite for this. You may have guessed you need to be an elf or half-elf will work as well. The idea being that the accuracy of elves is legendary, especially that of elf archers and spellcasters. And so, as an elf, you have an uncanny aim with attacks that rely on precision rather than brute force. And so, you gain the following benefits: you may increase your dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 to a maximum of 20. And whenever you have advantage on an attack roll using dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, you can re-roll one of the dice once. So that in itself, it's, my first take on it is you can get a bit min-maxy with this, of course, especially when something's kind of racially based, and we know there's classes that align up well with that. And so, it can be a powerful one, in my opinion, but that is elven accuracy.
Okay, interesting. I find it kind of funny that charisma is on there for your ability score increase. I mean, like, I know it's for the spell casting, but I'm just imagining, your uncanny aim is increased. Like, you can pick out somebody's weakness when you're trying to go for that, like, really serious, vicious mockery.
I honestly feel like that's like a justification after the fact. It's clearly because elves usually pump into dex and half elves usually pump into charisma. And if you're going to spend a feat and only get, one boost, you're going to get it. You want it in one or the other, right? Like, depending on your character build. So I see the meta reason behind it. I like your reasoning better, Kyle.
Thank you. All right. So I've got wood elf magic. So you have to be a wood elf, obviously. You learn 1 cantrip from the druid spell list, as well as Longstrider and Pass Without a Trace, both of which of those you can cast once without expending a spell slot, and you regain the ability to cast them again after a long rest, using Wisdom as your spellcasting modifier.
Yeah.
Exploration heavy one is what I see there.
I figure the most
definitely.
wood elves are probably rangers in the first place, so that just seems redundant.
A lot of the time.
That's right. I was trying to think of a counterpoint to that, Adam, but it's right. Wood elves, ranger, and then it seems redundant, but then I was thinking, well, what if they're not a ranger? What if there's something else? What are they more likely to be? And how would this benefit them if there were anything other than a ranger?
This would be great for your scout, the rogue subclass scout, or for Oath of Ancients paladin, right?
I was thinking paladin.
If you're a wood elf and you're something else and you want to dig into the wood elfiness of it, then sure. But honestly, if they already have it, if they're a ranger, they already have access to these spells, I will just give them comparable shit off a druid spell list to make them feel special.
But I mean, if they are a ranger, are they really going to be taking this?
Yeah, well, that's kind of my point. Is like, I guess it makes wood elves a little bit more rangerish.
Yeah,
like
I think it's
your stock
mostly
wood elf.
Yeah, you want to dig into the backstory, or you really want to like lean into the theory of being a wood elf. Is kind of how I imagine it.
It is
This is a
2023. Nobody gives a shit about being an elf anymore.
New players.
We're all Thrycreen and Plasmoids and Kender at this point, right? And
New players are humans and elves.
Yeah, by 6th edition, we'll all just be furries. So, mine is Fey teleportation, and this is for high elves, only high elves. So the idea here is that you're going to get Misty Step. That's the big thing. Do you guys know Nightcrawler from the X-Men?
Yeah.
Yep.
In the comic books, it's established that when he like bamfs around, he's actually like moving through a hell dimension and appearing nearly instantaneously somewhere else. So it's like a dimensional rift. And here's the same idea: is your Fey teleportation is based on the fact that you can momentarily walk through the Feywild to shorten the distance between where you are now and where you want to be, right? So you also get a bonus to intelligence and charisma. You can knock either one of those up to 1 to a maximum of 20. And of course, you can speak, read, and write Sylvan. So neat. The fact that you can add Misty Step to your spell list is useful. It's also useful that you can cast it once between rests without using a spell slot. But ultimately, I mean, I know a lot of people that go after Misty Step anyway. It's one of the more popular spells I see at my table.
Oh yeah.
And if you're a high elf, chances are good that you're going to want your intelligence or your charisma to be through the roof, because you've probably picked a wizard or a bard or something.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. Misty Step is one that a lot of people will take anyway. So it's when I see things like that, I feel like I would be drawn to another feat.
I feel like I'm taking this one at level 1. so
Yeah.
I don't have to I can grab a different spell later on, right? And plus, I don't think you have access to Misty Step at level 1. You'd be level 3 when you get it, right?
All right.
It's a
Okay.
level 2 spell, so
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful for taking it at first level, then, I guess. Yeah, that makes sense. Can you use another spell slot to also use Misty Step, or is it just once? And if you want to use it again, you also have to take it as a spell.
you get it once for free, but you
Yeah.
also learn it, and it says right in it, you learn the Misty Step spell.
Okay.
So it's yours, it's on your spell list. You get to
Yeah.
do it once for free every time that you take a short or long rest. So
Okay. So we have one more in the elf-specific racial feats, which is called the Drow High Magic. So this one you have to be a drow, and you can cast Detect Magic at will, which great. And then you also learn the Levitate and Dispel Magic, which you can cast once without using a spell slot, regaining them after a long rest, and using Charisma as your spellcasting modifier. Honestly, this is a great one. I would take it right away at first level.
yeah, I mean, I think that this is a bonus because Drow have that sunlight sensitivity, which really discourages people from playing them. So
Yeah.
it does feel powerful to get early, and I think it offsets that negative.
What was the last part, Kyle? I think I just missed out the last bullet point.
You use Charisma as your spellcasting modifier for these spells.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. It's only for Drow, right? We don't even play them very often. They kind of don't even fit in with most campaigns due to their sunlight sensitivity. Yeah, it's okay. I just think it's unlikely that I'm ever going to use it because of the prerequisite of Drow in this one. But I know that makes sense with the flavor, the narrative.
I think they actually got rid of the sunlight sensitivity in Mordekainen presents Monsters of the Multiverse.
Morty's Monster Muffins. Nobody ever gets it right.
Yeah.
Megan has completely given up on episodes. She just calls it Mordecai's Monster Manual. Like, she just does not give a fuck anymore.
And I think most people, I say Mordenkainen, and a lot of people say Mordenkainen, and I think originally it was supposed to be Mordenkainen, but a few of us changed it along the way.
I always heard that it was Mordenkainen, and I heard it on some show like years and years and years ago, and then I think I infected the rest of you with it. So it is Mordenkainen officially in the pronunciation guides you find in 5th edition. So
Okay.
so that's my faux pas.
Adam, you should know you can't trust what you hear in podcasts.
Hey man, I've never listened to a podcast in my life. What are we on next?
We are moving on to dwarves. We roll again.
Same
or stick with the
initiative?
steam order? Sure.
Okay,
let's go.
for it.
Okay, so I'll go first. So I have a Dwarf of Fortitude. Also in Xanathars, the prerequisite, you guessed it, is you need to be a dwarf. I think these are the dwarf ones anyway. You have the blood of dwarf heroes flowing through your veins, and because of that, you gain the following benefits. You can increase your constitution score by 1 to a maximum of 20, and whenever you take the dodge action in combat, you can spend 1 hit die to heal yourself. You roll the die, add your constitution modifier, and regain a number of hit points equal to the total minimum of 1.
That
Okay.
feels really powerful on paper until you realize that no dwarf ever is going to burn an action dodging.
I can't. Outside of the classes that can do dodge as a bonus action, I can't remember the last time I used that action to dodge.
I have seen my players, my current table, use it during skill challenges.
Okay,
When there's
sure.
like they're crossing a bridge and there's arrows coming at them, they will decide for this one, I'm going to do dodge. And I'm like, all right, well, roll but I usually make it an acrobatics check, right? So
It seems to be the forgotten action at my table. Even my players, if they have nothing specific that they want to do, they would say I do nothing before they would say I take the dodge action. I do nothing. Then you don't want to lie down. You don't want to take the dodge action. Nah, I'll just hang out.
fair.
Yeah, is there no like limit to how many times you can use it?
The
Like, you
limit
can
here
just-
is that it burns your action.
yeah.
Right? So that's really crippling. Unless you are a dwarf that is okay, Terry, do you remember way back in the day with Curse of Strahd when we were trying to storm the gates of the castle and I was playing
Yes, I-
Vargas and we had to run 150 feet, but I was like, my legs are shorter than everybody else and I was not able to keep up. I was running, I was dashing, and I could not keep up with anybody else. And for the last couple of rounds, as everyone else is in combat, I'm running my movement and taking the dodge action as arrows are flying at me, right? And then
Yeah.
running forward, taking the dodge action again. And that was the only time I think I've ever used it as a player. But it was as a dwarf, so I mean, that fits.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, but also, I think one of the reasons it never gets used is because there is no tangible benefit to using it, right? Like if I had this feat, I would probably use the dodge action more often,
Well,
right? If
the tangible benefit is you don't take damage, right? Like you get out of the way.
yeah, but I mean, most of the time you figure I could probably prevent more damage by just attacking and killing someone earlier than taking a
Right.
dodge action.
That's the deal.
For anyone listening and trying to do the math on this, remember, players do way more fucking damage than monsters do, as a general rule. There are sometimes you get like epic level monsters or dragon breath or something, but like for the most part, players have way better damage output per round than similar monsters. So if you want this to be finished quickly, kill, don't hide, right? Players can suck up that damage a whole lot better than any monsters can, and they can deal more damage than the monsters can as well. So
Yeah.
I also think it's one of these things that, like, if you are heavily outweighed in terms of the action economy here, right? Like, let's say you're surrounded by a bunch of monsters that all have multi attack. Taking the dodge action once gives them all disadvantage on all those attacks for the next round while you are also healing. So, I mean, it is, in a way, a better healing spell, right? Because what is it? Cure Light Wounds is 1d8 plus wisdom modifier, whereas this is one of your hit die. And then also you're getting disadvantage on being attacked for the entire round rather than just a heal.
And you get to add your con modifier. So you may have a +5, whereas the healer only has a +3, right? So like it's just really circumstantial. I don't think I would ever take this. But anyway, let's move on to the other dwarven feat. This is squat nimbleness, which is for dwarves or any other small race. You can slap this on a gnome or a goblin or whoever you want. So the idea here is that you are uncommonly nimble. You increase either your strength or your dex by 1. You increase your walking speed by 5 feet, and you become proficient with either athletics or acrobatics. Also, you have advantage on any athletics or acrobatics checks that you make when you're trying to get out of a grapple.
Oh, that part's useful.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to take this as a primary feat that replaces my ASI. I am definitely going to take this relatively like level 4 or 8 or something. If I'm a fighter and I've got a bunch, yeah, I would pick this up. Or if this is like I'm at a table where we get the ASI and the feat, I would pick this up, right? So
yeah,
it's decent in my opinion, but it's not going to. This is not going to break your game.
No, it's not going to break your game. Although, I mean, yeah, if you're playing at a table with a DM who loves to grapple or uses monsters that use it a lot, it will really come in handy.
Well, yeah, if you're the tank and you're up front, the monsters are getting bigger and starting to grapple you, and they're stronger than they were before. Advantage on getting out of the grapple is going to be good.
Yeah.
When you put this with the Battle Rager, which is one of the worst barbarian subclasses, but that's one where you have spiked armor and you're supposed to like grapple people, and that does damage to them.
Yes.
Most people have figured out at this point in 5th edition that you getting grappled doesn't affect your attacks. So like I will just grapple you right back. And that tends to be what people do. So this would be like, I grapple you. I'm a dwarven battle rager. I grapple you. I do a bunch of damage. You can try to grab me, but I'm just going to let go and then wiggle out when I want, right? Mm-hmm. So it gives you a little bit more control over that. But again, that's really specific, and that's pretty niche.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, moving on to humans and half-orcs. So I've got Prodigy. So for this one, you have to be a half-elf, half-orc, or a human. You gain 1 skill proficiency, 1 tool proficiency, and 1 language, as well as expertise in 1 skill, provided it isn't already gaining expertise from somewhere else, like from the rogue or the bard.
Jesus, that's pretty good.
I like it. You got to get creative with that one, and I'm trying to think, okay, which tools should I use, which something, but it's giving you some good options there, and the tool sets are not used often enough. I don't think, and you've reminded me to try and find a way to bring it to the forefront in my games more. But I do like that one, and I would try and get creative with it as well as the player.
Yeah, I like it too. I think it'd be one of those things that you would take if you don't have a rogue in your party and somebody needs to pick a lock.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
At some point, we're going to do an episode where we cover downtime activities, and that's when you use a lot of tools and whatnot as well. So, like, I think that this is something that is going to be really useful for people with the exploration pillar or even the role play. If you just lean into the role play and that tool, you decide that it's going to be an instrument, right? Like you can get a little bit bardy without being a bard with this.
Yeah. Actually, in another episode I did with Megan and James, I think we went over tool proficiencies and the rules that they have for it in Xanathar's Guild, which it really expands on like what you can do with tools and gives you rules on how tool proficiencies mix with each other to make almost like a third tool proficiency. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like that. Yeah.
That is definitely an aspect of the game that I feel should be explored more.
Yeah, that's right. No door is a problem when you've got carpenter's tools. So there we go.
Or fireball.
Or fireball. Okay, so moving on, I have Orcish Fury from Xanathar's. Prerequisite is you need to be a half orc. Apparently, full orc is not going to work for this. Your fury burns tirelessly, and because of this, you get the following benefits. You increase your strength or constitution by 1 to a maximum of 20. When you hit with an attack, and if the attack is with a simple or a martial weapon, you can roll one of the weapon's damage dice an additional time and add its extra damage of the weapon damage type. Once you use the ability, though, you can't use it again until you finish a short or a long rest. Immediately after you use your relentless endurance trait, you can cause your reaction to make one weapon attack. Just to remind you, relentless endurance is when you are reduced to 0 hit points, but you are not killed outright. You can drop to 1 hit point instead. So that would mean you're not killed outright, you drop to 1 hit point, and then you can use your reaction to make a weapon attack.
This is my favorite one so far because it is building it directly into the half-orc stats, right? Like this is specifically supposed to have synergy with the way that half-orcs specifically work. I like that. This feels like good game design.
Yeah, I like it too. It's making more of those epic moments. You know, I feel as though if what was supposed to happen was the half-orc was supposed to go down to 0 hit points, they go to 1 with relentless endurance, and then they use their reaction to make this attack. If you do this at the table, you could use something like the emphasis roll, where you roll 2 d20s, and then the one with the number which is furthest away from 10 is the number that you use, and you can get a real epic moment from this. I like this one a lot.
I like the idea behind this one a lot, but I don't know. I feel like the weapon attack one, I would like it more if it was you could use this ability equal to the amount of times equal to your proficiency bonus. Because I feel like 1 extra damage die once for long rest is meh.
If I can be perfectly honest, this is why feats need to evolve, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
Because I think this is absolutely fine for tier 1.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's probably going to be used more in tier 1, where you're actually, dropping down to 0 hit points on a almost regular basis.
Right.
Oh, that happens at all tiers.
The goblin tries to kill you, but you instead kill the goblin. That's what happens here.
Yeah.
It's the know you moment, right?
All right. So out of the elven, dwarven, human, and half-orc feats, which one is your guys' favorite and why?
Same initiative order would be me, right? And I know this one was mine, but this is what I do. I really like Elven Accuracy. Actually, I'm not much of a min-maxer, but I've been thinking about going back to Fighter recently, Arcane Archer, or maybe I'll even try and make a Ranger fun instead. And I feel like I would like this one. I would use it. So I quite like Elven Accuracy.
All right.
If I can be honest, the Wood Elf magic and the what was it called? The Orcish Fury. Those two feel really good because they feel like they're really complementing the race that they're supposed to be tied to in ways that the other ones seem a little bit more generic. So I don't hate those, but the Prodigy by far for me is the one that is going to really impact potentially every session, right? Because you're getting that extra, skill and expertise and tool set, and like it just keeps going. Like there's more shit to be done there, and like we focused on the tools, but more skills and expertise, that's powerful,
right?
Especially when you want to sync that into stealth or perception or acrobatics, or one of the big ones, right?
And you're creating more opportunity to open up that exploration pillar that we talk about always struggles, where I know I said Elven Accuracy, that's very combat specific, and it's very situationally specific as well. Whereas with the skill proficiency and the tool set and the expertise, you've got more opportunities to use that more often.
I'm starting to, as we continue to do these feats episodes, I realize more and more that I should be giving that free feat at level 1 or handing out feats at my own whim at like levels 6, 12, and 18, right? Just to be like, hey, you guys did some badass shit, here you go. Because I would give like narrower lists of feats, choose one of these, and Prodigy would always be on that list.
Yeah, it'd be pretty good to be given. I like the idea of just giving them out, right? You mentioned earlier, trying to encourage a player to, I guess, gain the skills of the feat they're going to take. It also sounds like a really good way of rewarding a player for, consistent action, or like, being really true to a character that they've written. You're like, you know what? You have been doing this consistently. You've been let's say, just lock picking, like on a regular basis. You're trying it out, even though your character can't do it. Like, they're trying to learn, you know what? Here's the Prodigy, because all of a sudden, you know what? You practice it enough that you gain it.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Which one is your favorite, Kyle?
You know what? I really like the dwarven ones. I like both squat nimbleness and the dwarven fortitude.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. It seems really cool. I'm thinking of like the epic moment, where your dwarf is down to 5 hit points and he's surrounded by bad guys, and doesn't know if he can make it through another round, dodges 6 hits, heals himself a little bit, and then comes back for the victory. Right? Yeah, it gives them more, like, oh, I don't need you, elf, helping me out. I don't need your healing. I can do this all on my own,
Yeah.
Well, you have an epic moment there where, I was saying we wouldn't use it very often, but there are times when the party splits up. There are times when my character died, when he got split off from everybody else. And there's times where, if you were this dwarf, you may be getting attacked and you're not going to beat all of them, but you need to survive a number of rounds. And if you can heal with a hit die every round and impose disadvantage on all the attacks coming at you within the same turn, within the same round, it does create an epic moment, because your party might be 3 rounds away or something. These situations happen. It's just an example of where you could use it and it would be fun to do.
Yeah.
Or you've got a wizard behind you and they're also down to their last hit points, right? You can't take out all these guys that are in front of you, but maybe you can give them enough time to pull off a big spell to take everybody else out.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
Which one of these is your guys' least favorite?
Probably the one I just defended, which was the dwarf fortitude. And I gave an example of how you would use it, but I think I just don't see it coming up often enough. I've never played a dwarf. I just think, for me, it is unlikely that this is going to happen in at least the next 10 years for me. So for that reason, I'll say that's the one I like the least, because it's the one that I'm least likely to use.
All right.
At what point, Terry, are you going to embrace the dwarf? I know
I don't like short people. So joke, internet. It's a joke.
Bigot.
Sorry. Sorry, Adam, what was your question? I was trying too hard to make my short people joke and I wasn't listening to you.
No, I was just asking, when, like, is it because you can't grow a beard, Terry? Is that what it is? Like, is it a jealousy?
The beard is getting better. Well, it's not getting better. It's getting longer. It's not better. And I have recently shaved here, but you can. It looks like a toilet brush, my beard, when it grows like out the bottom. It's terrible. Anyway, but I'm starting to embrace shorter characters. I'm coming to smaller races. I'm bringing them into my games.
Yeah, but you're always going to pick the pretty ones, right?
Yeah, probably. Probably a tiefling or something will be next year.
I'm going to say my least favorite is the one that I covered for elves, and it's the Fey teleportation. And this is a bit of a hot take, because intelligence or charisma, +1, learning a new language, and Misty Step, that's all like pretty good stuff. But it just feels like a gimme. It just feels like, if I'm going to play a high elf, this is clearly in my progression, and it always will be, right? It's like when you start to play, like, there's no warlocks out there that are not leaning into the Eldritch Blast. Right?
Yeah.
There are no sorcerers out there that aren't fire somehow, right? Like, there's just some of these, like, well, okay, I know what this character is going to be, and it just feels stereotypical and therefore uninspiring. Would I take this as a high elf? Absolutely. Am I excited about it? Yeah, I get to Misty Step. But is this fun? Nah. I'm not going, yes, level 3, I get a blah 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 blah. Like, I don't care.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I would have to go with the wood elf one, because you get mediocre spells right? A cantrip from the druid spell list, long strider and pass without a trace, which are
The thankless spells.
Pass
thankless
without
spells.
a trace is the hidden gem there. I have had many an NPC guard utterly fooled and I'm sitting there frustrated as a DM because I just can't find these fuckers. I
Yeah.
designed a stealth encounter because you guys have 2 paladins in the party and you whip out pass without a trace. I'm pissed.
Yeah, I have the same thing I have with languages. It's the same kind of problem. You know, you try and create some sort of challenge, and then some of these spells are just kind of game breaking in a way. Passes out a trace. I would include in that list.
One of the
Yeah.
things I used to do, and this was years ago when I was like trying to game the system, because this is 3.5, but I always left my languages blank until I needed them, and then I would fill them in. So,
Well, that's definitely cheating.
yeah, but that was back in 3.5 when like the number of languages you could speak was based on your intelligence modifier as well. So like I would just get high intelligence characters, would then just like leave the languages blank. What do you speak? Common and other stuff. I'll let you know when it comes up. I speak primordial.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's usually draconic, isn't it? I don't know where all of these people are learning draconic from, but every 85% of player characters know draconic. It doesn't make any sense.
Because they know your obsession with dragons.
My table is all giants, and I mean that no one should be surprised by that, but like it's all giant, elven, and draconic. I cannot get away from them. And every once in a while, one of them has infernal for some
Infernal. Yeah, exactly. And now sometimes that makes sense, right? A tiefling or something, but sometimes you're like, where did you learn the language of hell? Where did you
are
learn
an ASMR. What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Or where did your 19-year-old human champion fighter learn the language of devils? Can you tell me that?
Yeah. Spent a lot of time in the library, okay?
Yeah.
Speaking of draconic,
Yeah, moving on to Dragonborn feats. So that is just me and you, Adam, I guess. So Secretary, let's roll.
alrighty. Well, Terry, you roll 2. Find out where you land
I'll
on this
roll.
because we'll
My
gotta go
turn.
through a
I
few.
got
of
an
these, right?
11.
19.
I got a 16.
Right.
Second with a 16. Hey, last with an 11. That doesn't happen in this. Okay, so for Dragonborn, did we talk about like were there draconic feats and fizz bands? Have we gone over that?
I remember this. I think so. Kyle, you're the feats expert.
But I don't think you had to be a Dragonborn to get to those dragon feats. You just had to be like around dragons or inspired by dragons. This is specifically for Dragonborn. And so the one I've got is called Dragon Hide. You manifest scales and claws. So you choose strength, constitution, or charisma to go up by 1 because charisma is a little strange. You grow scales and it makes you prettier. And then, but also your scales get harder. So when you aren't wearing armor, your AC is now 13 plus your dex mod instead of the basic 10. So that's all right. You just have like a natural armor. You also grow retractable claws, which sounds really cool until you realize that you got to make an unarmed strike, which means you're doing 1d4 plus your strength modifier for slashing damage. This is absolutely nonsense.
Yeah.
After tier 1.
Yeah, just play a lizard folk. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Except worse.
So I do like the bonus to AC, but like it's not going to stack with any other sort of like class stuff, like a barbarian or a monk who get unarmored increases to their AC. But like I don't know. This feels. I don't know when I would ever pick this.
Yeah.
Actually, wouldn't it? Like because the barbarian and monk get AC, and it's their con. It's 10 plus their con modifier and their dex modifier. So this would be adding 3 AC to the base, I guess.
No, it's very specific. It's in its rules is written that if you have multiple unarmored bonuses, you pick the highest one. Hard stop.
Okay. Yeah, then it's
so
lame.
It's going to be a rare situation where this is useful, right? It's going to be, attacking you in the middle of the night when you're not wearing your armor. And then, of course, you'll have a 30-minute argument that your paladin or whatever wears his armor and all that sort of stuff. But it's going to be very few situations where you can use this, I think. You know
what I'm going to do with this? I'm going to hand this out. Megan is playing an Ascendant Dragon monk right now. So she's doing unarmed attacks all the time, and she's all about dragon stuff. I'm going to have her drink dragon blood or get hit by a dragon breath, like breathe in green dragon poison or something, grow scales, her unarmored shit is still going to be the same, but she'll get to boost up strength, con, or charisma, which are none of her strong points as a monk. So that's going to, buff her a little bit. But she's going to be able to do slashing damage when she's unarmed if she would like to use her claws. I'm going to ignore the 1d4. I'm just going to say, hey, you know how your monk shit stacks as you go. She's level 6, so I think she's doing 1d6 unarmed damage right now. But it's bludgeoning. Now it can be slashing. You can have dragon claws. Shit like that, right? Like, I'm going to be inspired by this feat to imbue an already draconic themed character. But I'm probably never going to just pick this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and the damage types as well. I don't think we think about those often of how useful they can be. It can be to move her from bludgeoning to slashing is great. That means you can great. Now you can cut ropes on your turn with your claws. Before you couldn't punch the rope in half. So it's there's times when you get creative with it, it can be useful. Or
hell, the other useful thing for it is if they said that it's magical slashing damage, you'll be able to hit ghosts.
Yeah, sure.
Even if you don't have a magic weapon, right? Like that unlocks some opportunities. So, but they didn't say that. I don't know. This one just feels weak.
Yeah. So I got Dragon Fear. This is also a Dragonborn specific one, obviously. You gain 1 point to strength, con, or charisma. And instead of using your breath weapon, you can instead choose to roar mightily, causing each creature within 30 feet that can hear you and see you to make a wisdom saving throw with a DC of 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your charisma modifier. On a failed save, that creature becomes frightened of you for 1 minute, unless it takes damage, at which point it can repeat the saving throw.
I just have to pause. Sorry, Kyle, if you want to finish it.
That's it. No, I was just going to say it's all right. I mean, if you're looking for more flavor from your Dragonborn, I guess.
If your charisma mod is high enough.
One thing on fear. Here's the thing on fear with the frightened thing. It never says that friendly creatures are exempt. It says every creature that can see or hear you has to do this, which makes it very difficult. I had one of my player characters before had this fear ability, and I just changed it. I said you're never using this because by rules as written, you're always scaring your allies. So it makes sense. So I'm going to homebrew it that it doesn't affect allies. But again, it doesn't state that here.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, is it really that useful? Because couldn't you just try to make an intimidation throw instead? You're already a Dragonborn, you just roar.
Well, I mean, it's insight versus detect thoughts, right? It's like you might be able to intimidate them where they may choose another target, but they can still move towards you if they want to.
Yeah, it is going to carry a steeper penalty for failing than it would for succumbing to intimidation. However, it's still such a low DC. 8 plus your proficiency modifier. You're using this fear effect at I don't know, tier 1, tier 2. Your proficiency modifier is a 2 or 3. So you're at 11 plus your charisma. You're never gonna get it above 16, right? Which means the monsters that you want to scare away are going to pass it, and anybody else, it doesn't matter if you say, I sent 3 goblins scurrying. Funny moment, but who gives a shit? They're just goblins. By level 4, I can kill a bunch of them. So
yeah, and you wasted your breath weapon attack.
Yeah.
I mean, the frightened related abilities I tend to use for positioning stuff more. If there's a mob, goblins is a great idea. Okay, maybe 40% of those we can stop coming towards us, which means I kind of control their positioning a little bit more. But you're right, it's just not going to be useful that often. I would say past tier 1. I think we're being friendly with tier 2 as well.
All right.
Yeah, sorry, that's me again. We're moving on to tieflings.
Yeah. Terry now. Then we'll go back to you.
Oh, but I got a 19.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're doing. Okay, we're moving on to tieflings. And I will use, mine is Infernal Constitution. So the prerequisite is you need to be a tiefling. So fiendish blood runs through you as a tiefling. And because of this, it unlocks a certain resilience, which is akin to that of some fiends. So you get these benefits. You can increase your constitution score by 1 to a maximum of 20. You now have resistance to cold and poison damage, and you have advantage on saving throws against being poisoned.
Yeah.
Feels very dwarven. If I'm honest, it kind of feels, I get it, like fiendish, it's akin to certain fiendish abilities, just feels a little bit misplaced. It feels very dwarven, I think.
Yeah. The poison damage for a tiefling is, I don't know, not what I imagine. I mean, I guess, hellish, it's terrible, but
do you call bullshit and say you just make it cold and fire because you're part fiend? You can put your hand in the fire. Doesn't that just feel more tiefling?
That does seem to make sense to me. That does seem to make sense. I might even say fire and poison as opposed to fire and cold.
Well, okay, so here's my reasoning, because I don't know if anybody remembers this, but I crunched the fucking numbers quite a few books ago now, but like I crunched the numbers on Monster Manual, Volos, and Tome of Foes. And I sat down, I looked at them all, and I said, okay, what are the most common damage types for resistances? What are the most common damage types for afflicting this damage? And immunities and vulnerabilities as well. Fire and poison are by far the most common, and there are all sorts of creatures that use poison. You've got fiends, you've got plants, you've got all sorts of undead, handful of aberrations. Like, there's just tons of, plus everything drow is poison. All the yuan T are poison. Like, there's just a lot of poison out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next, but it's dwarfed even by fire. Everything does fire damage in 5th edition, right? That's why I never want to play a fire-based character. I watch James do it all the time, and I'm like, what are you doing? By the time you get level 8, everything is resistant or immune to fire.
Right.
There's no point in this. So when I'm looking at how much, like, if I want to give them resistant to both fire and poison, man, they're just mitigating a shit ton of damage all of the time. That's why I like cold and fire, right? I think cold and poison from a math standpoint makes sense, just based on how often you're going to see it. But that's a big gift. Like, fire and poison's a big gift.
Yeah.
That's probably half, roughly 40 to 50% of the monsters are doing at least one attack that does those two types.
Right. Yeah. So,
I mean, it's pretty good though, because with the Tiefling, they already get fire resistance. So now fire, cold, and poison.
Oh shit!
like-
they do already get it as a tiefling, don't they?
Yeah,
they already get what? Sorry, I missed that.
fire resistance.
Oh, right, of course. Yeah, okay, well, that makes sense. I do like the advantage on saving throws against being poisoned, but I use a lot of poisons in my game. I get poisons coming up all the time for me.
Yeah, or if you have something that's drow heavy, like I know we just went through it in another game I played, and it can fuck you up really bad, real quick.
Quickly.
So the other tiefling feat that we have here is the Flames of Phlegethos. So the idea here is that you're calling on Hellfire to just like imbue your own magic. You can increase your intelligence or charisma by 1, really good for tieflings. And then when you use anything any sort of magic that does fire damage, you can re-roll any one fire damage dice, but you have to use a new roll. So for your Hellish Rebuke, or if you've decided to lean into like Burning Hands or something like that, you're rolling multiple damage dice. If you look at the fire dice you're rolling, you can re-roll one of them. Whenever you cast a spell that deals fire on top of that, you can cause flames to wreathe you until the end of your next turn. The flames don't do anything to you or your possessions, but they do shed bright light out to 30 feet and then dim light to an additional 30 feet, so you light up more than a torch. And any creature within 5 feet of you that hits you with a melee attack takes 1d4 fire damage.
Honestly, that's a great feat.
I do quite like that.
My only problem is that it's going to really piss off the tiefling rogue, just because you become bright. But honestly, tiefling warlocks and sorcerers and shit will eat this up. I actually quite like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you're rolling 8d6, right? There's nothing more frustrating than rolling 8d6 and coming up with 4 ones. And now you can re-roll all of them.
No, you can re-roll 1. You can just re-roll.
Re-roll. Okay.
You're not you re-roll any roll of 1. You're right.
Yeah.
That's not even the exciting part for me. It's the melee attacks part.
Yeah, when they hit you, they automatically take 1d4 fire damage.
Yeah, that's the part that's going to come up more often, I think.
There's no roll. There's no save. You're not trying to hit them. They just take it.
Right. So if you're feeling good, you could, run through a crowd and let them get their opportunity attacks off and hit them all with it.
Well, commoners have 4 hit points, right? So, I mean, you're potentially killing 25% of a population that hits you if a mob of commoners come at you.
Yeah.
Really playing into that tiefling thing, huh?
I've never had a tiefling
mob.
I've never had a tiefling that has not been persecuted in some way. I don't know what it is, but they love to be Frankenstein's monsters.
Makes sense. Or the definition of an edgy character, I think. All right, so which of these Dragonborns and Tiefling feats do you guys like the most?
I mean,
Adam?
like the one I just covered. That one, the Dragonborns get shafted all the time. They never get anything good. They got shitty, like racial traits and stuff in the monster manual. Fizzban's brought them up to par, but they've never been really like special. You got to go above and beyond to make a Dragonborn feel special by giving draconic gifts, and these feats are just kind of like half measures that aren't really, they're not going to be useful like after a little while. Like eventually you're just going to find better armor than your dragon hide. You're going to do more damage than your dragon claws. You're not going to be able to make that fear pop off at, even mid levels, right? So the tieflings by far got better shit. And I don't know, I like the flames of Phlegethos better than I like the Infernal Constitution, but they're both good.
Yeah, agreed on all points. The Flames of Phlegethos, I think, is my favorite one. I'm going to use it more often, makes for more epic moments. It's going to be much more rewarding, I think, or at least for me anyway.
What about you, Kyle?
I mean, I would have to agree with you. The Flames of Phlegethos is definitely my favorite. I think it's going to be the most useful. Although, I kind of coming around on Dragonhide to like just a little bit. Like if you're playing a class that only has light armor or something, this is better. And you're going with a high dex, maybe like a bard or a rogue, it could be useful.
I just think that most people will, because of the stat bonuses of, I think it's strength and charisma for Dragonborn, you're not getting rogues. You're getting paladins. You're getting fighters. You're getting, I mean, you might get a bard,
right?
But like you're not getting it where you want it, right? Like this doesn't stack beautifully with like a monk.
Yeah. I honestly, it's a missed opportunity that you can't take that stat increase into dex. You get strength, con, or charisma, but not dex.
Yeah. Honestly, this would be really powerful if they just said adds +3 to your AC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might almost be too much.
I'd take an adds +2, right? Like, I don't know. I'm just, like I say, I would hand this out as an afterthought, like a little boon to my player instead of making them waste a feat slot on it.
Yeah. Or a +1 to AC if you're not wearing armor. I think that could have been better.
Yeah.
Then you could have used it on a monk but still not dex. All right. Which one of these is your least favorite?
I mean, the fear.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah, Dragon Fear. I mean, I like the idea of it, but it's not going to work as well as we'd like it to, or for as long as we want it to.
Yeah, no.
You want to know what I would do with it? I would say, first of all, I want to beef up the breath weapon to do a number of damage dice equal to your proficiency modifier, right? Just so that it stacks with you. So eventually you're doing 6d6 damage with your breath weapon. But then you're adding this fear effect to it as well, right? It's going to be really powerful when you're level 2 sitting in a cavern fighting a bunch of rats and you do your breath weapon, toast a bunch, and all the rest of them scurry. But you're probably not going to make all of the high level devils that you're fighting late game run away. You'll still hit them with the breath, and you might make some of their minions run. So that Dragon Fear just feels underwhelming. That should have been coupled better. The Dragonborn's just disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. Also, Jerry, you mentioned earlier that it doesn't specify that it won't affect your allies, which is dumb.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Let's move on to halflings. Oh, looks like it's just me and you for this one, Adam.
No, it's gnomes first.
Oh no, we got gnomes first, right? Let's just keep it the same order. So I'll go next. So my one is Fade Away. You got to be a gnome, obviously. You gain 1.2 dex or intelligence, and once per long or short rest after you take damage, you can use your reaction to become invisible until the end of your next turn, unless you attack, deal damage, or force another creature to make a saving throw.
This is weirdly powerful. I watched Dan do that like once per short rest invisibility with his furball all the time, and he's pretty strategic, right? So he waits to use it at the right moment, but he gets into the perfect position. And he can pop it off whenever he wants. He doesn't have to wait to get hit or anything, right? So
yeah,
I feel like the Furbolgs is a little bit more powerful, a little bit better. But I don't hate this. This is all right.
Yeah. So yeah, all right though. I think you nailed it.
Yes, it's good to keep the game interesting. Though DMs, I try to remind that invisibility is that you cannot be seen, not that you cannot be detected. You still leave footprints. Your feet are wet if you've just come out of the water. It's you're still making sounds. All those sort of stuff that needs to be remembered. So yeah, it is good it's not as powerful as people would first think it is, though.
Only thing you're doing is imposing disadvantage on the next attack.
Yeah. Okay, so for me, my next one for gnomes is Svirfneblin magic. I think you would pronounce it Svirfneblin, right?
Well,
I say Smirnoff, not Smirnoff. So
it's Svirfneblin. You're right. I'm very excited that Terry, you get to talk about gnomes.
Okay, great. So this is for gnomes, specifically deep gnomes, and you've inherited the natural spellcasting ability of your ancestors. So this feat allows you to cast non-detection on yourself at will without needing a material component. You can also cast each of the following spells once with this ability: Blindness, Deafness, Blur, and Disguise Self. You regain the ability to cast these spells when you finish a long rest. Your intelligence is your spellcasting ability for these spells, and you cast them at their lowest possible levels. That's important to note if you're not an intelligence style caster.
That's okay.
It's okay, right? It's all right. I mean, you're limited by, you would probably take it if you were an intelligence caster, because you're going to have more benefit from the buff there. But it's all right. Blindness, Deafness, I think, is a often overlooked spell. Blindness is particularly important if you're fighting a caster. Non-detection at will without a material component, though. Is that game breaking?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
The third level spell that you're not dropping a spell slot on.
how powerful is it? It's been a while since I've looked at non-detection.
I actually have never seen the spell before. For the duration, you hide a target that you touch from divination magic. The target can be a willing creature or a place or an object no larger than 10 feet in any dimension. The target can't be targeted by any divination magic or perceived through magical scrying sensors.
So there's a few elements to this, right? First of all, you got to have scrying, which is heavily used in your game. Adam, I know you don't like scrying too much. You need to have probably a more experienced player to understand what this means for non-detection and divination magic, and an experienced DM that for the same reasons. There's a lot of things we've got to line up for this to be used often.
Yeah. Only on yourself seems like not super useful unless you have a lot of the time your party is splitting.
Right, like the big bad's not going to be pissed off with one player when they get there and they go, I've been watching all 5 of you little bastards. Not him. He's all right. He hasn't done anything. So he was also there, for sure. We're mad anyway.
But I mean, the other ones are pretty good. Blindness, Deafness, Blur, and Disguise Self.
Yeah.
I like it.
Non-detection becomes way better. You can cast this on yourself at will without needing a material component, but it also lasts 8 hours. So you just have to do this 3 times a day on you, right?
Yeah.
This, I don't think it's game breaking, because it's all about other people trying to, use divination magic to try to find you. This doesn't make you impossible for the guards to see you. It means that the hag doesn't know where you are.
Yeah.
Right.
And
This also says, sorry, go on.
well, just how often does that come up?
Yeah. So non-detection is you hide a target that you touch. Does that mean it can be an object? We're trying to hide an object from somebody?
Normally,
Yeah, you
yes, but you can only cast it on yourself with this feat.
Oh, okay, right, okay. Yeah. Not too excited by the way they laid that out.
Yeah. But I mean, the other parts of it still kind of make up for it, right? 3 more spells. Blindness, Deafness, Blur, and Disguise Self are all very good.
Yeah, this isn't a big deal. Also, who's picking a Svirfneblin? Like, this is never going to come up. Like, there's also that, right? So, probably the least popular race that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. That one also
Yeah,
has a
fine.
sunlight sensitivity,
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
but not anymore, I don't think. I think they changed it all in MP, MM.
We gotta come up with a shorthand for this, like the Monster of the Multiverse. Like it's such a fucking mouthful. It's like
Yeah.
Bigby presents Glory of the Giants. Just make it. Monster Manual is so good. What a
Yeah.
great name for a fucking book.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Morty V2.
Yeah.
the Morty sequel.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, okay. So for halflings, I've got Second Chance. And so this is clearly for halflings only. Both of the halfling things are kind of like based on the idea that you're lucky. So this one's all about when someone tries to hit you, you get to like avoid it a little bit. So you increase your dex, con, or charisma by 1. When a creature you can see hits you with an attack roll, your reaction forces that creature to reroll. You can do this once between rests.
It's just another annoying halfling thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This gets completely overshadowed by the lucky feat. This gets completely overshadowed by diviners Like there are lots of ways to do this better.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't like too many ways in which you can essentially like remove yourself from the threat of the game. So I don't like lucky or second chance, uncanny dodge.
Silvery barbs is another one.
Silvery barbs, I fucking hate, to be honest, 'cause that gets used against me by the wizard in my table a lot. Because a complaint I hear from players sometimes is, specifically players with this type of thing, is I didn't really do anything. I was just kind of invisible in the back. I just hid. Nothing even hit me because I never get hit, and I just kind of stayed there until it was over. I hear these kinds of things. So it seems like something would be an advantage, like a benefit. But okay, you do 5, 6, 20 sessions in your campaign or whatever, and it's like you're hardly ever really included in the big battles. You don't feel that same stress and challenge as everyone else. So the game becomes a bit flat in some ways because of this type of stuff.
I'm fighting this exact problem that you're describing with Dave right now, because he is a fairy scout, which means everything he does is ranged and he flies. Up he goes and he hides. And I look, I've got some experience. I know what I'm doing about throwing shit at him, but there are definitely, he chose a flying character. I have to reward him for that some of the time. There are some combats where all he does is get pot shots off. And because he is a scout, he's a rogue, he only has one attack. Like he sits back, goes, pew. All right, I'm going to wait 15 minutes for my next turn. Right. Like, and I feel like this is the same thing. It's making it so that you are not involved.
Yeah. People don't get a reward from avoiding damage. They get it from giving damage in those big epic moments. But no one ever goes, oh my god, I did so great. I didn't get hit for 10 sessions.
Unless they're a rogue with evasion, at which point you got to start throwing things across the table.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Honestly, it's not great. You can give someone essentially disadvantage one time per rest.
Yeah.
Like,
well, plus the ability score improvement. And we have to acknowledge the fact that there's so many feats out there that don't do that. So that is kind of like a half step in the right direction as well, which is why I think we're seeing a lot of the weaker shit in this episode, is because we're getting a lot of these abilities score improvements by 1 instead of by 2, right? So we're getting like a half and half instead of a full feat or a full ASI.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, compare it. This strikes me as like along the same veins as Dwarven Fortitude, right? So with that, you take a dodge action, so you're imposing disadvantage essentially for a turn for all attack rolls against you, not just one, and you're also healing. And I think you also get a stat bonus.
Also, you have to be able to see this one.
Yeah.
So this feels just like more halfling lucky nonsense that pulls you out of the game and isn't even really that good.
Yeah. It's one of those shoehorned feats. They're like, shit, we need another one for halfling. What can we do?
Yeah.
There you go. Mine is Bountiful Luck. So once again, halfling. When an ally within 30 feet of you rolls a 1 for an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can use your reaction to allow that ally to roll again. They must use the new roll. Seems an unnecessary addition, because why would you use the 1? But I suppose clarity is important. And then once used, they cannot use the lucky racial trait again until the end of their next turn.
So the only use case I can think of, just to answer your question there, is if you are trying to, let's say that there's a small kitten you are trying to do non-lethal damage to, but you've got to just kind of like knock it out to catch it or whatnot. It has 1 hit point, and you don't want to do death by massive damage. But then the halfling beside you miss, the halfling beside you says, here, do this. And then you crit. And now you do 7 damage. That's death by massive damage. That kitten is dead. You have to take that roll.
Yeah.
That's the only kind of scenario is that you don't want to crit, right? I can't imagine anybody else ever saying, no, I don't. I would rather take the 1.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a good point. Honestly, it's a great ability.
Yeah.
You know, there's no limits on uses. It doesn't even use up your lucky trait, racial trait feature. You just can't use it on your turn or for 2 turns, I guess.
I don't like it because it's spreading that halfling bullshit to other people now. So now not only your characters annoying me with halfling bullshit, now other people's characters annoying me with halfling bullshit, and I don't like it.
I'm
but
definitely taking this when I play at Terry's table.
I'm going to be a halfling diviner with silvery barbs. I'm telling you, Terry's going to be re-rolling all night.
Fucking silvery barbs. Yeah, the Wizard of my Tale uses silvery barbs all the time, and is very creative with the animate objects as well, which isn't relevant to this conversation, but another way to annoy me.
I have three players that are bards, and every one of them took silvery barbs.
I see so much shit talking about that spell on the internet. Like,
It is.
I think at least once a week, I'll see some comment being like, fuck this fucking spell.
Yeah. And it's usually Terry from another one of his alternative accounts.
Yeah, it's just me trolling online. Yeah.
All right. So which one of these gnome and halfling traits is your guys' favorites?
I mean, clearly the last one, Bountiful Luck, is the best out of the group of them.
Mm-hmm. Is it because
Right.
it would piss off Terry? Because that's why it's my favorite.
No, because who gives a shit about the non-detection, really? Like, that's not super powerful. Fade Away, I would rather burn out, if I can be honest. And when it comes to that fucking dumb halfling thing that I was doing, a second chance, I'm like, haha, disadvantage. Reroll that attack. They're probably gonna fucking hit me anyway. I'm fucking 2 feet tall. Like, I don't know. I prefer the Bountiful Luck. I like the idea that I'm helping my party. This is one of the handful of feats that in combat helps other people and not just myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is good. And perhaps I should look at this from the perspective of the player who would be excited to take this feat, but I'm looking at it from the perspective as me as DM going, I hate you and everything you stand for. But yes, on paper, it's great.
I think this is good for building camaraderie around the table as well, just the same way that I love it when my players, I've got, like I said, 3 players that have taken levels in Bard. Fuck my life. But the amount of bardic inspiration that is tossed around my table, it gives me a lot of opportunities to DM, but it feels good and the players have all really meshed.
That's right. Yeah. This is a team player type feat. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Which feat do you guys like the least? Is it Fade Away or Second Chance? Because obviously.
Second chance. Probably,
Second
yeah,
chance.
Yeah.
Second chance. The only time I'm going to take this is if I am a halfling, nothing else makes sense, and I'm a charisma caster with a 19 and I want the 20. So I might as well I'll take the 1 in this, and by the way, I can do this thing once in a while.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Agreed. All right. We are going to move on to other realms. So these are feats specifically from Eberron with these ones. So Adam, why don't you take us away?
I don't have anything from this. Mine's a different thing from later.
Oh, right. That's Terry. Okay, so
Both.
so I got the Revenant Blade. So this one is from Eberron. So you are basically a descendant of a double-bladed scimitar master. And somehow this trait is genetic, I guess. It's honestly the dumbest reasoning I've ever seen. Like, someone in your family was really good with a sword, so now you are too, without any training. Anyways, you got to be an elf. You gain 1 point to strength or dex, and while using a double-bladed scimitar, you gain +1 to your AC, and the scimitar has the finesse property for you.
Yeah, sure. It's very specific, but if it helps, sure.
Yeah.
Adam, anything for that one? Any thoughts?
No, I'm trying to look it up right now, but it's just to see, like, is it as dumb as we think it is?
The double-bladed scimitar or the...
Just the backstory of why you have it in the first place.
Yeah, literally, that's what it says on the thing. You are descended from a master of the double-bladed scimitar, and some of that mastery has passed on to you.
Well, the prerequisite is you have to be an elf as well.
Yeah.
Right? And then, fine. Like, you're right, that's dumb. Wood elves. Oh, wood elves are weird in Eberron. Like, the Eberron elves have like weird traditions and shit that are passed down through long lives and reincarnation sometimes. And like, I think that this just, I would honestly say that it has passed down to you, not genetically, but through tales of lore and training with your family. You grew up using a double-bladed scimitar, like a wooden version, and now you're pretty good at it. Because a double-bladed scimitar is one of the unique weapons that exists in Eberron, right? So we don't get many additional weapons outside of the player's handbook. This is one of them, and I would have to have a pretty good narrative reason for handing this fucking nonsense out.
All right, moving on then. Okay, I have Aberron Dragon Mark from Eberron as well. Prerequisite for this is you must have no other dragon mark, and you have manifested an Aberron Dragon Mark, and because of this, you get the following benefits. You increase your Constitution score by 1 to a maximum of 20. Have all of mine been increasing Constitution score? I feel like the previous 3 have at least.
I feel like that's really common.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you learn a cantrip of your choice from the sorcerer spell list. In addition, choose a first level spell from the sorcerer spell list. You can learn the spell and cast it through your mark. Once you cast it, you must then finish a long or short rest before you can cast it again through the mark. And Constitution is going to be your spellcasting ability for these spells. When you cast the first level spell through your mark, you can expend one of your hit dice and roll it. If you roll an even number, you gain a number of temporary hit points equal to the number rolled. If you roll an odd number, one random creature within 30 feet of you, not including you, takes force damage equal to the number you rolled. No other creatures are in range. You take the damage. You also develop a random flaw from the Aberrant Dragon Mark Flaws table. I won't give you the full table. It's a D8 table. I'll give you 2 examples. First example is your mark whispers to you, and its meaning can be unclear. And the second example would be animals are uneasy around you. There's an option here for this as well.
Sorry, are you familiar with dragon marks in general, Terry?
No.
So in Eberron, the way that it works is that everything is dragon based in Eberron. The world exists because of dragon gods and so on and so forth. But there are specific houses that do specific things. They're kind of like guilds, but they run more like businesses. And so these businesses are they're noble houses that are very, very powerful within the world. Sometimes the families of like the head of the businesses, because they're all family run, sometimes some of the descendants will get a specific dragon mark. Each one of the houses gets like a different kind of dragon mark that kind of ties in with the family business, because they've built the business up around the dragon marks. For example, if you have a dragon mark that lets you scry, then that's part of the, like, you're in the spy network house, right? So just that kind of shit. But these look like these really awesome, amazing, intricate tattoos, but they're really like birthmarks that show up on you. You can never choose whether or not to get one. And just because you're part of the noble house doesn't mean you will get one at all, right? So, but if you have a dragon mark, you become like the all-stars of your house. And players can choose to have a dragon mark instead of a background.
Right. Okay.
The aberrant dragon mark shows up as, because there are, I think, 12 houses. This is the 13th dragon mark, and it's almost like a curse that's laid upon someone. It's got benefits, but there's also downsides, and it's like having a negative supernatural birthmark, like an indication that there's something very strange and wrong about you, and you will actually get kicked out of your house. And some houses embrace you and others don't, and so like the dragon mark, the aberrant dragon mark, really has its own place in the world as being like, you know how the tieflings are outcasts? Aberrant dragon marks are outcasts as well. So that's where all this comes from. The animals are uneasy around you, or the mark whispers to you. It's because the devils and demons in this world are replaced by aberrations, because there's a big like history of aberrations trying to take over and ruling the world. So that's why we have the aberration and the dragon come together in this weird magical thing that makes you a fucked up person. So
okay. Well, that's great. Well, that makes sense for this next part, where the option comes in then for the greater aberrant powers. So at the DM's option, a character who has the aberrant dragon mark feat has a chance of manifesting even greater power. So when you reach 10th level, a character has a 10% chance of gaining an epic boon from among the options in Chapter 7 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. If the character fails to gain a boon, they have a 10% chance the next time they gain a level. Secondly, if the character does gain a boon, the DM chooses it or determines it randomly. The character also permanently loses one of their hit dice, and their hit point maximum is reduced by an amount equal to a roll of that die, plus their constitution modifier. And the reduction cannot be reversed by any means.
This is really powerful. Like, it's really intense. But I would only really use this for like story purposes, right?
Yeah. I like the Dragon Mark flaws in there. I like anything which kind of lifts up the exploration pillar a little bit. So things like animals are uneasy around you. That's something that will get said once and that will never actually come into effect in the game, even though it can be quite important. Everybody's got, like, most people have like a house cat or a familiar, or there's things around where it's noteworthy when it happens. and it should be brought up more often. So I like those types of things because I don't forget about them. You know, I have we had play characters in my table that were affected by a sphinx and then later ghosts, so it aged them a lot, and they looked like they were 95 or something. You tell them, they forget about it, but now every room that you go in, you're the 95-year-old, even if your character is 21. Like, these things need to be remembered. So I like these examples from this table.
I also believe, and I would have to look at it, so don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that what we're looking at here with the cantrip and the constitution boost and the first level spell that you get and all that, that's more powerful than the average dragon mark. So you are getting a real boost. Also, they've all got I think, burn a background to get their dragon mark. You don't. You get your background and the feat.
Right. Yeah.
So it is a little different. It's a little stranger. It's a little more powerful, I think. So like, I don't super hate this. It's flavorful. I would very much want to dig into this if I was playing any sort of like political intrigue in Eberron. I wish I had time in my life to do something like that.
Yeah, agreed.
So there's also one other feat that doesn't fit anywhere. It's a variant rule in the Dungeon Master's Guide to allow players to play with firearms. I tend not to. I will hand out a firearm, but once you have used it a set number of times, it just will not fire. There's no more ammo in this world, that kind of thing. So like, I've handed out a blunderbuss a couple of times and it always has one shot in it. Save it for when you need it, right? But there's a feat called Gunner, and you can find this in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It's a little bit different, but I think it's worth bringing up because it's like the last feat. You have a quick hand and a key eye when employing firearms, granting you the following benefits. So your dex score goes up by 1 to a max of 20. You are proficient with firearms now, which again, go look at the Dungeon Master's Guide for a breakdown of all the firearms rules. You ignore the loading property of firearms, which is really, really useful. And then being within 5 feet of a hostile creature does not impose disadvantage on your ranged attack rolls. I would like to be very specific with this. You do not get disadvantage on any ranged attack roll. You throw a dagger to someone 3 feet away. You shoot a longbow at someone 3 feet away. You don't have disadvantage on that shit anymore because of the Gunner feat. And it's a technicality, and it clearly means firearms, right? But it's interesting that I could almost pick that up alone on that phrase and never use a gun.
Yeah, that's fair. I like it. I like the Gunner stuff. We're all trying to find ways to bring firearms into the world, even if it's just temporarily, into the game for a little bit of fun and something different, but it can quickly get away from you and you can lose control of it. So for that reason, I don't like to do it too often, but this is a good feat if you're going to include it in your game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how you do firearms. I'm not entirely against firearms. I don't like them, and if I have the option, I wouldn't include them in my game. And if a player really wants it, I would pretty much just, equate it with a crossbow, right? It would do the same damage, have the same requirements. Because Gunner is basically kind of just what is
crossbow expert.
Crossbow expert, yeah, right.
I think it is crossbow expert with the addition of you gain proficiency with firearms.
Yeah. So I would just consider it that. Right? Like, if you really want a gun, sure, but it's gonna work the exact same way as a crossbow. You're not gonna deal more damage. I'm not gonna give you like exploding ammunition. Well,
I absolutely will. See, that's the thing, is I'm 100% gonna hand this shit out because there are rules for it on page 268 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. And a pistol does 1d10 piercing damage, right? Let me see what else. An automatic rifle does 2d8 piercing, but you can do burst fire with it, and it reloads after 30 shots. And you need to spend 2 hands on it. Sure, that's cool. You compare that against disintegrate or any of the other big spells, and like, you're not tipping the board too much here, right?
Yeah.
The idea that the Gunner gets to ignore the reload, which means normally the reload property means you have to waste an action or bonus action after a certain number of shots to reload, right? And so each one of the guns listed has a list of how many shots it can hold. And sometimes, like the shotgun, it can only hold 2. So every third or every second round, you burn your bonus action reloading, right? The gunner doesn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But again, if I'm going to hand these out, and I do sometimes, if I'm going to hand them out, they're going to be rare, and there's no more ammo. And when it's done, it just falls apart, and you're further ahead with wands.
Yeah. Before we wrap up this episode, we're going to cut to a quick ad break.
If you've been inspired by the conversation in this episode, please feel free to reach out and share your creativity and ideas with us and the rest of the community. You can reach us on Facebook and Instagram, or on our subreddit, r/itsAmimic. Also, if you're feeling particularly generous, please follow and subscribe, and leave us positive reviews, likes, and comments. Engagements like that help us pop up on search engines and keep this show running.
So that's literally all of the feats in 5th edition as of the time of this recording. Over 5 full episodes of feats, except one. For those of you who have been listening to all of the feats episodes so far, have you figured out which one is missing? It should have been included in the first feats episode when we were talking about martial feats. While you think about it, let's wrap up this episode, and I'll let you know after the credits.
That's all for this part of our discussion on feats in D&D 5th edition. Make sure that you subscribe or follow and check back regularly to see what inspirations and insights we'll have for you in the future.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website at itsamimic.com, a store with some It's a Mimic merch, and a Patreon. This episode and others can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and most other podcast apps. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get.
This has been an It's a Mimic production. Please check the show notes for this episode to see links, time codes, and credits, and don't forget to reach out and share your own inspirations.
Okay, so the one that we missed, and I can't believe we missed this, I had it as its own separate thing because it's so important to talk about because it's one of the most popular ones. And then I guess it got deleted off the breakdown. I'm like, I didn't realize until much, much later. Is Great Weapon Master. People fucking love this one. Your marshals, especially barbarians and fighters, lean into Great Weapon Master. So here's how it works. You're essentially putting the weight of a heavy weapon into your attack, and you're using it to your own advantage. On your turn, if you score a critical hit with a melee weapon, or you reduce a creature to 0 hit points with one, you get to make one melee weapon attack as a bonus action. So if you crit or you knock someone to 0, you get to attack again. Also, on top of that, you guys know, I'm trying to think, it's the Berserker thing, I think Frenzy, where they can, or no, it's just a barbarian trait where you can just choose to sacrifice some of your to hit in order to do more damage. You get this as a feat.
Reckless attack?
Well. Sorry? Reckless attack. Yep, that's it.
No,
So
that gets you advantage, and then people get advantage on you.
right, but not,
Rage, frenzied attack, something like that.
but yeah, it stacks with this because if you're using a heavy weapon like a great axe, and you're proficient with it, you can choose to take a -5 penalty to the attack roll, and if it hits, you add +10 to the damage. If you put that with reckless attack, so you have advantage, you're really mitigating the problem there. So that is Great Weapon Master, and it is very popular. People love it. The marshals love it. So how do you guys feel about it?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I mean, they also have the same thing for crossbows, right?
Yeah.
It's very
popular
similar.
one. It works, right? It's not complicated. You get to use it often. It's, it has its place. It's not mega exciting for me, but I guess, I haven't played the right character for it in a little while. With the right character, it makes sense to take it.
When you were playing Titus, you had the glaive with the 10-foot reach, and that was a heavy weapon, right? And
Right.
can you imagine? And you were champion fighter, so you had the increased crit range on that too, of the 19 and 20. So
Right.
you would just be getting extra attacks on top of the sheer number of fighter attacks you already had. This would have felt really good, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Perfect character for it. Yeah.
So there we go. That's feats. Let's hope to God no more books come out with more fucking feats. I cannot believe there were 3 separate people that were in our fucking DMs on Instagram about this, about when are you going to cover feats? Do all the feats. I need all the feats. And since then, since we sat down and started recording, so we did the first two, then I went and I checked on them. 2 of the accounts have been deleted, and the other one doesn't follow us at all. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing?
It's a thankless game. This.
but thank you, Kyle, for suffering through 5 episodes of talking about shitty mechanics on feats.
Hey, no problem. I got to talk shit for most of it, so I mean, bonus.
You get to be petty officer Kyle.
Yeah, that's right.
See you next Tuesday.